Why does a relationship fracture?
Okay. Relationship, they fracture in different ways. There's psychological fractures, emotional fractures, physical fractures, spiritual fractures. They fracture because the individual brings a fracture into the relationship. The relationship is dependent on both individuals, but the relationship can't thrive if the individuals themselves require repairing along the way. You can't complete the other person in a relationship. The other person is already meant to be completed themselves. You're simply along their journey in life when it comes to a healthy relationship. A fracture in a relationship can be anything. It can be when it comes to, say, a mental fracture, it can be things like trust, jealousy, certain types of issues. Physical fractures obviously stand for themselves. Emotional fractures can be past things stemmed from psychological issues, okay? The trust issue can bring an emotional one. You can have anger issues. You can have depression issues, okay? Spiritual issues can stem from it as well. Why am I so unhappy? Why am I so unlucky? Okay? Like any other fracture, it has to be healed the same way. To use a metaphor, think of a broken arm. In order to heal a broken arm, you put a cast over it. You have to immobilize the broken arm in order to heal the fracture. If there's no cast, then the arm is let loose. There's more damage, it's flailing around, it's causing problems. When you put a cast over it and you keep it still, you allow it to heal back to its original state. Not entirely, but the point of it is that you're trying to get the arm back to its original state. The same works for the fractures in relationships. In order to heal a fracture, if a person's going to heal themselves, if the relationship itself has a fracture that stemmed from somebody, in order to heal it, you need to bring it back to its original state. At one point, the individual or the relationship was healthy. There was a point when there was only positivity, there was laughter, everything was there, whether it was a physical, a mental one, an emotional one, or a spiritual one. It was healthy at one point. So you need to bring the relationship back there in order to heal the fracture. And how do you do that? Well, think of the broken arm. You need to immobilize whatever the fracture is. So let's say it's a mental fracture. You have trust issues. Let's say in the past you were cheated on, or perhaps you cheated on somebody else, and that too stemmed mental fractures, we'll say, psychological fractures. How do you heal it? Like any other healing process of the mind, of the body, of the soul, it begins with acknowledgement. Understanding that you have the fracture in the first place, the break inside you or the relationship. The best way to acknowledge something, to immobilize it, okay, is to take away the fear of it. Now, majority of these fractures, the reason why they turn into very serious breaks in the future and it only progresses and gets worse and worse and worse over time, is because you're letting it attack you. Okay, let's say, for example, the mental fracture of the trust issue, and you bring it to a new relationship. That trust issue is going to continuously attack you every time the person looks at their cell phone, every time the person goes out. Stories are not going to make sense. You're going to start looking and digging over the course of time. So to get rid of that, you need to acknowledge that you have the trust issue. With the help of, if you're hopefully you're in this relationship, the help of the healthy boyfriend, girlfriend can help you. If you're not, you're by yourself and you want to deal with it on your own, the same process can be applied. Immobilize it. The way you do that is to put it in front of you by putting it in writing. Pen to paper. Write out, I have blank. I have an issue with jealousy. I have an issue with trust. I have an issue with whatever. Okay? I have an issue with money. I have an issue with whatever. When you write it out, you're putting the fear of it directly in front of you. Now, as a metaphor, this fear can no longer attack you. It can't strike you from behind. It can't hit you anymore because you're now looking at it directly in its face. You now have the opportunity, for the first time, to defend yourself against your attacker. It can no longer cause you fractures. It can't hit you anymore. You know it's there. You haven't defeated it, but you've acknowledged it. It's the beginning. When you know that you have an issue with trust, you can begin to work on positive things, for example, to build your relationships in that sense. You can work on things with your boyfriend or girlfriend. You can work on strategies. You can see counselors. Since you've acknowledged it, you've taken the first step to make it better. Okay? If it's a spiritual break, same sense. You've acknowledged that you don't have faith, that you don't have this, that you don't have that. If it's an emotional break, you don't have this, you don't have that. By acknowledging it, by putting in writing, you're removing its power. You are now in control. And if you don't believe that you're in control, that too is a fracture. Whether it's a personal relationship fracture or it's one in the relationship, you don't feel you have power in a relationship, acknowledge that. Okay? Once you acknowledge it, you can start building on it. If you don't feel like you have power, that's the very first thing to work on. Self-confidence is going to give you the ability to challenge your fears. So the first thing you should work on is to write there that I have an issue with self-confidence, with self-power. If you don't, then I recommend you strengthen it by writing I am self-confident. I am powerful, and I am going to conquer my fears. Hopefully, you have somebody to help you. And if you don't, by doing this on your own, you're going to enter the world more self-confidence that's going to attract to you more positive people, more healthy relationships with friends, with families, because you'll no longer be a broken person. You'll be a healthy, mobile, active person.